You know that little smile on the Amazon logo? The one that looks like an arrow pointing from A to Z? That's not just clever branding. That's a reminder of a single decision that almost never happened. A choice that came down to one conversation, one moment of doubt, and one man betting everything he had on an idea everyone told him was stupid. Let me tell you about the day Jeff Bezos almost gave up on Amazon before it even started. It's 1994. The internet is this weird, slow, clunky thing that most people think is just a fad. If you want to buy a book, you go to a bookstore. If you want to shop, you go to a mall. The idea of typing your credit card number into a computer and hoping some stranger sends you a product? That's insane. That's how you get scammed. But Jeff Bezos, a vice president at a hedge fund in New York, sees something different. He reads a statistic that changes everything. Web usage is growing at 2,300% per year. Not 230%, not 23%. 2,300%. He's never seen anything grow that fast in his entire career. And he starts thinking, if the internet is going to explode like this, someone needs to build stores on it. Real stores. But what do you sell? You can't sell everything. You need something specific. Something that makes sense online. He makes a list. 20 different products. Music, software, magazines, computer hardware. But one thing keeps standing out: books. There are over 3 million books in print at the time. No physical store can carry all of them. The biggest bookstores in the world maybe have 150,000 titles. But online? You could list every single book ever published. You could create the ultimate bookstore that exists only in data. The more he thinks about it, the more it makes sense. Books don't spoil. They're easy to ship. People know what they want when they buy them. You don't need to try on a book like you try on shoes. It's perfect. But here's the thing, Jeff Bezos has a really good job. He's making serious money at this hedge fund. He's 30 years old. He has a wife, Mackenzie, who he's been married to for just a year. They have a nice life in New York City. Safe, comfortable, predictable. And he's thinking about throwing all of that away to sell books on the internet. So he goes to his boss, David Shaw. Shaw is brilliant, one of the smartest guys in finance. Bezos respects him deeply. He sits down and explains the whole idea. The internet growth, the bookstore concept, the potential. Shaw listens. Then he says something that stops Bezos cold. He says, this is a really good idea. But it would be a better idea for someone who doesn't already have a good job. Think about that for a second. Your mentor, someone you admire, basically tells you that your dream is solid but you're too successful to chase it. That it makes sense for a nobody with nothing to lose, but not for you. Most people would hear that and stay put. Most people would think, yeah, he's right. Why risk everything when I already have everything? But Bezos can't shake it. The number keeps haunting him. 2,300% growth. He knows this moment won't last. Someone is going to build the dominant online bookstore. The question is whether it'll be him or someone else who gets there first. He spends weeks agonizing over this decision. He can't sleep. He's running the numbers in his head constantly. Mackenzie sees him struggling, and one night he tells her everything. The fear, the doubt, the opportunity, the risk. She doesn't hesitate. She tells him to go for it. She says she'd rather see him try and fail than spend his whole life wondering what if. But Bezos is still torn. So he develops what he calls a regret minimization framework. He imagines himself at 80 years old, looking back on his life. He asks himself, will I regret leaving a stable job to chase this crazy internet bookstore idea? And the answer is no. Even if he fails, even if he loses everything, at least he tried. But the opposite? Staying safe? Not taking the shot? He knows that would haunt him forever. At 80, he wouldn't regret the failures. He'd regret never knowing what could have been. That framework gives him clarity. It cuts through all the noise, all the fear, all the practical objections. It makes the choice obvious. In July 1994, Jeff Bezos quits his job. He and Mackenzie pack everything into their car and start driving west. Not to Silicon Valley, not to some tech hub. To Seattle. Why Seattle? Because it's near one of the largest book distributors in the country. And because Washington has a small population, which means he won't have to collect sales tax in many other states. It's strategic. Every detail matters. They drive across the country, and Mackenzie is behind the wheel while Jeff sits in the passenger seat with a laptop, typing out the business plan. They don't even know what they're going to call this company yet. Jeff is scribbling ideas, abracadabra. Awake. Browse. Bookmark. None of them feel right. Then he opens a dictionary and starts going through it alphabetically. He wants something that starts with A so it'll show up first in directories. He gets to the word Amazon. The largest river in the world. Exotic. Different. Vast. That's it. Amazon.com. They get to Seattle and move into a small house in the suburbs. Jeff sets up shop in the garage. He builds desks out of old doors from Home Depot because they're cheaper than real desks. He's trying to save every penny. He knows he'll need to raise money eventually, but for now, it's just him and a couple of early employees he convinces to join him. The first technical challenge is huge. They need to build a website that can handle a massive catalog. Remember, this is 1995 now. E-commerce barely exists. There's no playbook for this. No tutorials, no best practices. They're making it all up as they go. Jeff hires a couple of programmers. They work insane hours. The garage is freezing in the winter, boiling in the summer. They're sitting on the floor, cables everywhere, debugging code at 2 in the morning. Mackenzie is doing the accounting. She's packing boxes when the first orders start coming in. Everyone is doing everything. They launch on July 16, 1995. Jeff doesn't do any marketing. He just tells a few friends and posts on some internet message boards. Hey, this website sells books. Check it out. The first week they get orders from all 50 states and 45 countries. Jeff is stunned. He knew there was potential, but this is beyond anything he imagined. They're shipping books out of the garage, driving to the post office multiple times a day. They can't keep up, but here's the crazy part. Jeff isn't focused on making money yet. He's focused on growth. He's reinvesting every dollar back into the company. Buying more inventory, improving the website, hiring more people. This drives his early investors crazy. They want profits. They want returns. Jeff keeps telling them, we're building something bigger. Trust me, one of the key innovations Jeff insists on from the beginning is customer reviews. This is radical. Bookstores don't let customers write reviews on their shelves. Publishers are horrified. They think negative reviews will kill sales. But Jeff believes in transparency. He thinks customers are smart enough to make their own decisions, and he's right. The reviews make Amazon feel trustworthy. Real people sharing honest opinions. It changes everything. Amazon grows fast. Really fast. By 1996, revenue hits $15.7 million. By 1997, it's $148 million. Jeff takes the company public in May 1997. A lot of people think he's moving too fast, that the company isn't ready, but Jeff knows he needs capital to grow even faster. He needs to outpace any competitors before they can catch up. And competitors are coming. Barnes & Noble launches their own website. They're huge. They have name recognition, existing customers, deep pockets. Everyone assumes they'll crush Amazon. Jeff is terrified, but he doesn't show it. He stays focused. He keeps improving the customer experience, faster shipping, better selection, lower prices. There's a famous moment during this period. A journalist asks Jeff if he's worried about Barnes & Noble. Jeff says, "We're not competing against Barnes & Noble. We're competing against ignorance. Most people don't even know you can buy books online yet." That's the mindset. He's not playing defense, he's playing a different game entirely. But then comes the problem that almost kills Amazon. Two problems, actually. Both at the same time. First, growth is so explosive that the infrastructure can't handle it. The warehouse systems keep crashing. Orders are getting lost. Shipments are delayed. Customers are furious. Jeff and his team are working around the clock trying to fix it. But it feels like they're building the plane while it's already in the air. Second, the dot-com bubble is starting to burst. It's 2000. Internet companies are collapsing left and right. Investors are panicking. Amazon's stock price craters. It goes from over $100 per share down to $6. 6. People are writing articles with headlines like Amazon bomb and Amazon toast. Analysts are saying the company will be bankrupt within months. Jeff is in crisis mode. He has to lay off 14% of the workforce. 1,300 people. He's devastated. These are people who believed in him, who took a risk on this crazy idea, and now he has to let them go. But he doesn't have a choice. The company is bleeding money. Internally, there are massive debates about strategy. Some executives want to cut back, focus only on books, get profitable fast. Others want to keep expanding into new categories. Jeff is caught in the middle. He believes in the vision of Amazon as the everything store, but he also knows they might not survive long enough to get there. He makes a decision that shocks everyone. He's going to double down, not pull back. He's going to expand even faster into new product categories: electronics, toys, tools, everything. And he's going to invest heavily in building out the warehouse and logistics infrastructure so they can actually deliver on the promises they are remaking. This seems insane to outsiders. The company is losing money. The stock is in free fall. And Jeff wants to spend more? But he sees something others don't. He sees that the internet revolution is still happening. The bubble burst killed off the weak companies, but the core opportunity is still there. People are still going online, they're still buying things. Amazon just needs to survive long enough to become the default option. There's a meeting where Jeff tells his team, we need to make a choice. We can try to please Wall Street by focusing on short-term profits, or we can focus on customers and build for the long term. We can't do both. He chooses customers. He says Amazon will measure success by how much value they create for customers, not by quarterly earnings. This is a massive gamble. If it doesn't work, everyone loses their jobs. Jeff loses his reputation. The company goes under. But if it does work, Amazon becomes something completely different from every other retailer in history. They survive, barely. By 2001, Amazon finally posts its first quarterly profit. It's small, tiny, really, $5 million. But it's proof that the model works. The stock starts recovering. Customers keep coming back. The flywheel Jeff always talked about is starting to spin. But here's where the story gets really interesting. Because most people think Amazon's success is about books and e-commerce. It's not. The real turning point, the choice that transforms Amazon from an online retailer into a global superpower, happens because of a problem Jeff notices in his own company. It's the early 2000s. Amazon's engineering teams are struggling. Every time they want to build a new feature or launch a new product category, they have to coordinate with a dozen other teams. Everything is interconnected. Change one thing and it breaks 5 other things. Development is slow, frustrating, inefficient. Jeff becomes obsessed with this problem. He reads about how modular systems work in other industries. He thinks about how you can build complex things from simple, independent components, and he has an idea. What if Amazon's infrastructure worked the same way? What if every team built their services like independent modules that communicate through clean interfaces? He writes a mandate. It's become famous in tech circles as the API mandate. He tells every team at Amazon, from now on, all data and functionality must be exposed through service interfaces. Teams can only communicate with each other through these interfaces. No more direct access to another team's data. No more back channels. Everything has to be designed so it could theoretically be offered as a service to external developers. People are confused. Why would we build our internal tools like we're selling them to outsiders? Jeff's answer is simple, because maybe one day we will. Most of the company thinks this is a weird distraction. They're in the middle of trying to survive and grow the retail business. Why are they wasting time rebuilding internal infrastructure? But Jeff sees the future. He realizes that Amazon has built something incredibly valuable that has nothing to do with selling products. They've built a massive, scalable infrastructure for computing, storage, and logistics. They've solved problems that every other internet company is going to face. What if they could sell that infrastructure as a product? In 2006, Amazon launches something called Amazon Web Services. It's cloud computing infrastructure that any developer or company can rent. Need servers, storage, computing power? Amazon will provide it, and you only pay for what you use. No upfront costs, no long-term contracts. Just simple, scalable infrastructure. The tech world is skeptical. Why would anyone trust Amazon, an online bookstore, with their critical infrastructure? Why would you build your business on top of a competitor's platform? But developers love it. Startups especially. Because suddenly, you don't need millions of dollars to buy servers and build a data center to launch an internet company. You can just rent what you need from Amazon and scale up as you grow. It's revolutionary. AWS grows slowly at first. Then it explodes. Netflix builds their entire streaming service on AAAs. Airbnb runs on AAAs. Reddit, Pinterest, thousands of startups, and eventually huge enterprises. By 2024, AWS generates over $90 billion in annual revenue and most of Amazon's operating profit. It's bigger than the retail business in terms of profitability. This is the choice that changes everything. Not the decision to sell books online. Not the decision to expand into other products. The decision to turn Amazon's internal infrastructure into a product that other companies can use. That's what transforms Amazon from a retailer into a technology company that touches almost every part of the internet. But Jeff isn't done. Because while AWS is growing, he's thinking about another problem: e-readers. It's 2004. Digital music is taking off because of the iPod. Jeff looks at books and thinks, why hasn't this happened here yet? E-readers exist, but they're terrible, expensive, clunky, ugly, limited selection. He thinks Amazon should build one. The right way. This causes huge internal fights. A lot of executives think it's suicide. Amazon makes money selling physical books. If they create a good e-reader, they'll cannibalize their own business. Why would they kill the golden goose? Jeff's response becomes another famous moment in Amazon history. He says, if we don't cannibalize our own business, someone else will. We'd rather disrupt ourselves than let a competitor do it. He greenlighted the Kindle project. It takes years to develop. The team has to solve hard problems. How do you make the screen readable like real paper? How do you make the battery last long enough? How do you get publishers to license digital versions of their books? The Kindle launches in November 2007. It costs $399. It sells out in 5.5 hours. Amazon can't keep them in stock for months. People love it. The convenience of carrying thousands of books in one device. The ability to buy and download a book instantly, anywhere. It changes reading. But more importantly, it gives Amazon control over the future of books. They're not just a retailer anymore. They own the platform. They set the prices. They decide the features. Publishers hate this. They feel like Amazon has too much power. But customers love it, and that's what Jeff cares about. Around the same time, Jeff makes another crucial choice that people overlook. He starts obsessing over speed. Not just making the website faster, but making the entire experience faster. How fast can we deliver products? 2-day shipping becomes standard for Prime members. Then 1 day. Then same day in some cities. Amazon builds out a massive logistics network, warehouses everywhere. Delivery trucks, planes. They're becoming a logistics company to compete with FedEx and UPS. This is expensive. Brutally expensive. But Jeff believes speed is a competitive advantage that's almost impossible to copy. Anyone can build a website. Anyone can source products. But building a logistics network that can deliver millions of products to hundreds of millions of customers in 1 or 2 days, that takes years and billions of dollars. Once Amazon has it, they're nearly unbeatable. Then comes Alexa and Echo. It's 2014. Jeff watches his kids use voice commands with their phones and thinks, why isn't there a device in your home that you can just talk to? Something always listening, always ready to help. Again, internal resistance. This has nothing to do with retail. It's a hardware product in a category Amazon has no experience with. Siri already exists. Google is working on their own assistant. Why would Amazon win this fight? Jeff doesn't care. He thinks voice is the next interface. After keyboards and touchscreens, voice is how people will interact with technology. And whoever owns that interface will control huge parts of people's lives. Their shopping, their entertainment, their information. The Echo launches in 2014 as an invite-only product. It's a black cylinder with a speaker and 7 microphones. You say, Alexa, and it wakes up, ready for your command. Play music. Set a timer. Order products. Answer questions. People are freaked out at first. You want me to put a device in my home that's always listening? That sounds like surveillance. But Amazon prices it aggressively. They make it useful. They open it up to developers so third parties can build skills for Alexa. It becomes the fastest-selling product in Amazon's history. By the time Google and Apple catch up with their own smart speakers, Amazon already has tens of millions of devices in homes. They own the market. And every one of those devices is a direct line to Amazon's shopping platform. Now let's talk about the darker side of these choices. Because Amazon's growth comes at a cost. The warehouse working conditions become a massive controversy. Workers report brutal quotas. Constant surveillance. No time for bathroom breaks, injuries, high turnover. Amazon becomes the symbol of everything wrong with modern capitalism. Jeff's response is mostly to ignore publicly and focus on automation privately. He's investing billions into robots that can do warehouse work. Not because he cares about workers, but because robots don't complain or quit or unionize. Then there's the impact on retail. Thousands of small bookstores close because they can't compete with Amazon's prices and selection. Malls die. Entire industries are disrupted. Critics say Amazon is destroying communities, killing jobs, creating a monopoly. Jeff's view is that this is capitalism. Customers choose Amazon because it's better. If competitors can't keep up, that's their problem. There are antitrust investigations. Accusations that Amazon uses data from third-party sellers on their platform to create competing products. That they manipulate search results to favor their own brands. That they abuse their power. Amazon denies wrongdoing, but the scrutiny grows. Internally, Amazon's culture becomes infamous. Jeff creates these leadership principles that every employee has to memorize and embody. Things like customer obsession and bias for action and frugality. But in practice, it creates a brutal work environment. People crying at their desks, backstabbing to get ahead. Stack ranking that forces managers to fire a certain percentage of their team every year. Many people burn out and leave. Jeff's management style is intense. He's famous for sitting in meetings reading memos in silence for 30 minutes before discussing anything. For asking devastating questions that expose sloppy thinking. For sending single question mark emails when something goes wrong, which terrifies executives because it means Jeff noticed and you better have answers. But here's the thing. These choices work. Amazon becomes one of the most valuable companies in the world. By 2018, it's worth $1 trillion. Jeff becomes the richest person on earth. The kid who drove across the country with a laptop, typing out a business plan while his wife drove, is now worth over $150 billion. But then his personal life implodes. In 2019, Jeff and Mackenzie announced they're getting divorced. The same Mackenzie who believed in him from the beginning. Who packed boxes in the garage, who told him to take the risk. The tabloids have a field day because Jeff is dating Lauren Sanchez, a TV personality. His phone was allegedly hacked by the Saudi government. Private messages leak. It's messy and public and ugly. Mackenzie gets 25% of their Amazon stock in the divorce settlement. That makes her one of the richest women in the world. She immediately starts giving away billions to charity. Jeff keeps most of the stock and stays as CEO. But something shifts. In 2021, Jeff steps down as CEO. He stays as executive chairman, but he hands day-to-day operations to Andy Jassy, who built AAYZ. Jeff says he wants to focus on other things. Space exploration with Blue Origin. The Washington Post, which he bought in 2013, climate change initiatives. Some people think he's lost interest in Amazon. Others think he has just done with the grind of running a massive company and dealing with constant criticism. He's 57 years old. He's accomplished more than most people could dream of. Maybe he's just ready for the next chapter. But Amazon keeps growing without him. It's over $2 trillion in market cap now. It's one of the most powerful companies in history. It employs over 1.5 million people. It touches almost every aspect of modern life in developed countries. You might not buy from Amazon, but you probably use a website or app that runs on AWS. You probably encounter their logistics network, even when shopping elsewhere. Their influence is everywhere. So let's go back to that first choice. The regret minimization framework. Jeff, at 30 years old, imagining himself at 80, asking what he'd regret. That framework led him to quit his job. To drive across the country, to start a bookstore in a garage. But think about all the other choices that followed. Each one was a moment where Amazon could have played it safe. Stick to books. Don't build a marketplace for third-party sellers. Don't invest in cloud infrastructure. Don't disrupt your own business with e-readers. Don't get into hardware with Echo. Don't build your own logistics network. Every single time, Jeff chose the riskier path. The path that required more investment, more patience, more long-term thinking. Wall Street hated it. Analysts criticized it. Competitors thought he was crazy. But each of those choices compounded. They built on each other. They created a company that's not just a retailer, but a technology platform that other businesses depend on. That's the real lesson here. It's not about one choice. It's about choosing consistently over decades to prioritize long-term value over short-term gains. To reinvest profits into growth rather than returning them to shareholders. To cannibalize your own business before someone else does. To build infrastructure that seems unnecessary until suddenly it becomes your most valuable asset. Most companies can't do this. CEOs are under pressure to hit quarterly targets, to keep the stock price up, to show profits now, not eventually. Jeff had the vision and the stubbornness to ignore all of that. He told investors from day one, "We're building for the long term, and if you don't like it, don't invest in Amazon." That clarity of purpose is rare. Most leaders say they're focused on the long term, but cave when things get hard, when the stock drops, when analysts criticize, when employees complain. Jeff didn't. He stuck to his principles even when it looked like Amazon might collapse. There's a quote from Jeff that sums this up. Someone once asked him what's going to change in the next 10 years. His response was, "That's an interesting question, but a better question is what's not going to change." He said customers will always want lower prices, faster delivery, and bigger selection. So Amazon should focus relentlessly on those things because they'll still matter in 10 years, 20 years, 50 years. That long-term thinking allowed Amazon to make choices that seemed weird or risky in the moment, but made perfect sense years later. ABUS seemed like a distraction until it became the profit engine. Kindle seemed like cannibalization until it secured Amazon's dominance in books. Echo seemed random until voice became a critical interface. The logistics network seemed expensive until it became an unbeatable competitive advantage. Now you might be thinking, okay, great for Jeff Bezos, he's a billionaire. He won, but what does this mean for anyone else? What's the takeaway for someone who's not trying to build a trillion-dollar company? I think the lesson is about how you make decisions. The regret minimization framework isn't just for entrepreneurs. It's a mental model anyone can use. When you're facing a big choice, don't just think about the pros and cons right now. Think about how you'll feel about this decision in the future. What will you regret more? Taking the risk and failing, or never taking the risk at all? Most people overestimate short-term risks and underestimate long-term regrets. We're afraid of looking stupid, of losing money, of what people will think. But years later, those fears seem small. What feels huge is the opportunities we didn't take. The things we didn't try. The safe path we stayed on because we were too scared to step off. The other lesson is about persistence. Jeff didn't succeed because of one brilliant insight. He succeeded because he kept making smart choices consistently over 30 years. He adapted. He learned. He pivoted when necessary but never lost sight of the core mission. That's harder than having a good idea. Anyone can have a good idea. Executing on it through all the setbacks, all the criticism, all the moments of doubt. That's what separates people who change the world from people who just talk about it. And here is the thing that gets lost in all the talk about Jeff's wealth and Amazon's power. None of this was guaranteed. At so many points, Amazon could have failed. The early years when they were scrambling to fill orders. The dot-com crash when the stock dropped 95%. The logistics challenges. The competition from Barnes & Noble, Walmart, every other retailer trying to get online. Any one of those could have been the end. But each time, Jeff and his team found a way through. They outworked everyone. They outhawed everyone. They made better long-term decisions than their competitors. And slowly, over years and decades, those advantages compounded into something massive. There's a Warren Buffett quote, "Someone sitting in the shade today because someone planted a tree a long time ago." Jeff planted a lot of trees. Oz, Kindle, Prime, Alexa, the logistics network, marketplace. Each one took years to pay off. But now Amazon sits in the shade of all those decisions. The counter-argument to all of this, of course, is whether Amazon has been good for the world. That's a much more complicated question. Yes, customers get cheap products delivered fast. Yes, AWS enables thousands of businesses. Yes, Kindle made reading more accessible. But also yes, Amazon has crushed competitors, contributed to the death of local retail, created harsh working conditions, avoided taxes, and accumulated enormous power with limited accountability. Jeff would probably argue that customer obsession justifies everything. That Amazon succeeded because it gave people what they wanted better than anyone else. That if workers don't like the conditions, they can quit. That if competitors can't keep up, they should innovate. That the market has spoken and Amazon won fair and square. Critics would say that's simplistic. That there are externalities to Amazon's success. That the race to the bottom on prices and working conditions hurts society. That monopolistic power distorts markets. That just because something is legal and profitable doesn't make it right. Both perspectives have truth to them. Amazon is simultaneously one of the most impressive business success stories in history and a symbol of everything concerning about modern capitalism. Those things can both be true at the same time. What's undeniable is the impact. Go back to July 1994. Jeff Bezos in his office at the hedge fund, reading about internet growth, making the choice to leave. If he'd stayed, someone else would have built an online bookstore eventually. But would they have made the same choices? Would they have expanded into a marketplace? Built AWS? Created Prime? Invested in logistics? Developed Alexa? Maybe, maybe not. But it wouldn't have been Amazon. It wouldn't have happened the same way. The specific choices Jeff made, the specific timing, the specific strategy that created the Amazon we know today. And it all traces back to one conversation. David Shaw telling Jeff that selling books online would be a better idea for someone without a good job. That moment of doubt. That question of whether to stay safe or take a risk. Jeff chose risk. And he kept choosing it over and over for 30 years. That's why Amazon exists. That's why AWS powers half the internet. That's why you can get almost anything delivered to your door in 24 hours. That's why millions of people own Echo devices. That's why thousands of authors publish independently through Kindle. That's why your favorite app or website probably runs on Amazon's infrastructure. One choice created all of that. But not just the choice to start Amazon. The choice to keep making bold moves when the safe move would have been to slow down, to stay small, to take profits instead of reinvesting, to focus on the core business instead of expanding into new territories. Every major Amazon initiative faced internal resistance, books to everything, retail to marketplace, e-commerce to cloud computing, physical products to digital devices. Each time, people inside Amazon thought it was too risky, too expensive, too far from the core business. Each time, Jeff pushed ahead anyway. That's the pattern. That's the formula. Not one choice, but 1,000 choices all aligned toward the same long-term vision. All willing to sacrifice short-term comfort for long-term dominance. All focused on the customer and the future rather than shareholders and quarterly earnings. You can disagree with Jeff's methods. You can think Amazon has too much power. You can believe the costs outweigh the benefits. But you can't deny the effectiveness of the strategy. The guy who drove across the country with a business plan built one of the most powerful companies in human history. And it started with imagining himself at 80 years old, asking what he'd regret. Everything flows from that one framework. That one way of thinking about decisions. Not what's safe or easy or profitable today, but what you'll wish you'd done when you look back decades from now. Most people never think that way. Most people optimize for comfort, for security, for not rocking the boat. And that's fine. Not everyone needs to build Amazon. But if you do want to do something significant, if you do want to make a real impact, you have to be willing to make choices that seem crazy to everyone else. You have to be willing to quit the good job. Drive across the country, work in a garage, go years without profits. Ignore the critics. Bet everything on a vision that no one else can see yet. And then do it again and again for decades. That's what separates Jeff Bezos from the thousands of other smart people who had similar ideas about the internet in the 1990s. He committed. Fully. Completely. He didn't hedge. He didn't keep one foot in the safe world. He jumped and figured out how to fly on the way down. And yeah, he got lucky too. The internet did explode. E-commerce did take off. AWS found a massive market. Things could have gone differently. Amazon could have been one of the thousands of .com companies that collapsed. Jeff could be a cautionary tale instead of a success story. But here's the thing about luck. Luck favors the people who put themselves in position to be lucky. Jeff didn't wait for permission. He didn't wait for the perfect moment. He saw an opportunity and moved, fast, aggressively, all in. That's the choice that made Amazon what it is. Not selling books. Anyone could have done that. The choice to build something that could become anything. To create infrastructure that could scale infinitely. To prioritize long-term potential over short-term reality. To keep making bold moves even after success gave him every reason to play it safe. Most people make one good choice and then coast. They find something that works and milk it. Jeff made one good choice and then made 100 more. Each one building on the last. Each one expanding what was possible. Each one risking what he'd already built to try to build something even bigger. That's why that smile on the logo goes from A to Z. It's not just about selling everything. It's about the journey from the beginning to the end. From the idea to the execution. From the garage in Seattle to the trillion-dollar company. From the moment Jeff read about internet growth to the moment Ace devoured half the internet. From books to everything. And it's still going. Amazon's still growing. Still entering new markets. Still disrupting industries. Healthcare, entertainment, groceries, logistics, advertising. There's basically no sector of the economy that Amazon isn't trying to enter or transform. Some people find that exciting, the innovation, the convenience, the progress. Others find it terrifying. The consolidation of power, the elimination of alternatives, the dominance of one company over so much of daily life. But regardless of how you feel about it, you have to respect the execution, the consistency, the long-term thinking, the willingness to keep pushing even when it would be so easy to just maintain. Jeff stepped down as CEO, but the machine he built keeps running. The choices he made years ago keep paying dividends. The infrastructure he built keeps enabling new businesses. The logistics network keeps growing. The flywheel keeps spinning. That's the ultimate test of a choice. Not just whether it works in the moment, but whether it keeps working years later, whether it compounds, whether it creates a foundation that lasts beyond you. Jeff Bezos is 60 years old now. He's worth over $200 billion. He could do anything. He could retire to a beach. He could buy islands. He could just spend money for the rest of his life and never run out. But he's still building. Blue Origin, his space company, trying to make space travel accessible. The Washington Post, trying to figure out the future of journalism. The Bezos Earth Fund, investing billions in climate change solutions. He's still making choices. Still betting on the future. Still prioritizing long-term impact over short-term gratification. The same framework that led him to start Amazon is still guiding him. What will he regret at 80? Not taking big swings. Not trying to solve important problems. Not using his resources and influence to make a difference. Whether he succeeds at those things remains to be seen. Space is hard. Media is struggling. Climate change is overwhelming, but he's in the game. He's trying. He's willing to fail publicly while chasing difficult goals. That's the through line of his entire story. From the hedge fund to the garage to the trillion-dollar company. Always willing to risk what he has to try 1401 to build something bigger. Always focused on decades, not quarters. Always trusting that long-term thinking and customer obsession will win eventually. And so far, he's been right. The choice to start Amazon worked. The choice to expand beyond books worked. The choice to build a WS worked. The choice to invest in logistics worked. The choice to develop Kindle worked. The choice to create Alexa worked. Over and over, the risky bet paid off. Will that pattern continue? Will his space company succeed? Will his climate investments matter? We don't know yet. But if you had to bet, history suggests you should bet on Jeff finding a way because that's what the regret minimization framework does. It doesn't guarantee success, but it does guarantee you'll try. And trying consistently, intelligently, relentlessly, for decades, that's usually enough. Most people never try. They think about it, they plan, they prepare, but they don't take the leap. They stay in the good job. They play it safe. They optimize for comfort and security and the approval of others. And that's okay. Not everyone needs to be Jeff Bezos. The world needs people who do all kinds of things. But if you do want to build something significant, you need to be willing to make that choice. To prioritize future regrets over present fears. To commit fully even when everyone thinks you're crazy. To keep pushing when you've already succeeded and could easily coast. That's the choice that made Amazon. Not one moment, but a pattern of moments. A way of thinking. A framework for decisions that prioritizes long-term potential over everything else. And maybe that's the real takeaway. Not that you should quit your job and start an internet company, but that you should think about your life in terms of decades, not days. That you should ask yourself what you'll regret when you're old. That you should be willing to make choices that seem risky now, but that I'll be glad you made later. Because most regrets aren't about the things we tried and failed at. They're about the things we never tried at all. The opportunities we saw but didn't take. The risks we thought about but didn't take. The safe path we stayed on because stepping off was too scary. Jeff Bezos looked at that safe path and said no. He chose the garage, the uncertainty, the risk. And he kept choosing it over and over until it built something that changed the world. The thing is, there are layers to this story that most people don't know about. Details that reveal just how close Amazon came to being completely different or not existing at all. Let's go back to 1995, right after Amazon launches. Jeff is in the garage with his small team, and they're dealing with a problem that sounds almost comical now. Every time they get an order, a bell rings. Literally, a bell connected to their system. In the first few days, everyone gets excited when it rings. They high-five, they celebrate each sale. It's magical. Then the orders start coming in faster. The bell rings constantly. It's annoying, they disconnect it. But that moment represents something crucial. Jeff realizes immediately that this is going to scale beyond anything he imagined. Most entrepreneurs would be thrilled and just try to keep up. Jeff starts thinking about what happens when they're getting 1 million orders a day, 10 million. He's planning for scale before they even have proof the basic concept works. This forward-thinking obsession shows up everywhere in Amazon's early days. Jeff insists on building systems that can handle 100 times their current volume. His technical team thinks he's crazy. They're barely handling current demand. Why waste time over-engineering for a future that might never come? But Jeff is adamant. He knows that if Amazon succeeds, growth will happen faster than they can respond to it. They need infrastructure ready to scale. This is around the time Jeff starts developing his other famous framework, beyond regret minimization. He calls it Day One thinking. He writes an annual letter to shareholders, and almost every single one references Day One. The idea is simple but profound. In business, Day One is when you're hungry, scrappy, focused on the customer, willing to experiment. Day Two is when you become comfortable, bureaucratic, focused on process over results. Day Two is followed by decline and death. Jeff's obsession is keeping Amazon in Day One forever. Even as they grow into a massive company, he wants to maintain startup mentality. This sounds impossible. How do you keep a company with over 1 million employees thinking like a garage startup? But Jeff builds systems to enforce it. One of the most famous is the 2-pizza rule. Jeff mandates that teams should be small enough that they can be fed with 2 pizzas. If you need more than 2 pizzas, your team is too big. Small teams move faster. They communicate better. They don't get bogged down in politics and bureaucracy. This rule shapes Amazon's entire organizational structure. Another system is the 6-page memo. Most companies use PowerPoint presentations for meetings. Jeff bans PowerPoint at Amazon. Instead, people have to write detailed narrative memos. 6 pages maximum. When you walk into a meeting, the first 30 minutes are spent in complete silence while everyone reads the memo. Then you discuss. Why? Because writing forces clear thinking. It's easy to hide fuzzy logic behind bullet points and fancy graphics. But when you have to write full sentences and paragraphs explaining your idea, you can't fake it. Either the logic holds up or it doesn't. Jeff believes this leads to better decisions. These systems seem quirky, maybe even annoying, but they work. They keep Amazon operating differently than other big companies. When most corporations become large, they become slow. Decisions take months. Innovation dies. Amazon stays relatively fast and innovative even as it grows massive. But let's talk about some of the failures. Because Jeff made plenty of bad choices too. The Fire Phone is probably the most famous disaster. Amazon launches their own smartphone in 2014. They invest heavily in it. Build custom features. Price it competitively, and it completely flops. Hardly anyone buys it. Amazon has to write off $170 million in unsold inventory. Jeff's response to this failure is interesting. He doesn't fire everyone involved. He doesn't shut down hardware development. Instead, he says that failure is the price of innovation. That if you're not failing, you're not taking enough risks. He tells his team that the Fire Phone failure is actually evidence that Amazon is doing things right, because it means they're willing to take big swings. This attitude toward failure is crucial to understanding Amazon's success. Most companies say they tolerate failure, but they don't really. When something fails, heads roll. People get cautious. Innovation slows. At Amazon, failure is expected. Celebrated, even. As long as you learn from it and the size of the bet was appropriate to the potential return. The Fire Phone fails, but many of the technologies developed for it get repurposed. The computer vision systems. The interface ideas, the manufacturing relationships. Nothing is wasted. This is another pattern with Jeff. Even failures become building blocks for future successes. There are other flops too. Amazon's first attempt at grocery delivery in the early 2000s doesn't work. They shut it down. Years later, They try again with Amazon Fresh and it does work. The timing is different. The technology is better. The customer behavior has shifted. The first failure taught them lessons they needed for the second attempt to succeed. Amazon Destinations, their hotel booking service, launches and shuts down within months. Amazon Wallet, their attempt at mobile payments, goes nowhere. Amazon Restaurants, their food delivery service, can't compete with Uber Eats and gets shut down. There are dozens of these experiments that most people never hear about because they fail quickly and quietly. But for every failure, there's a success that more than compensates. Prime Video starts as a strange add-on to Prime Shipping and becomes a major competitor to Netflix. Audible, which Amazon acquires, dominates audiobooks. Ring, the doorbell camera company Amazon buys, becomes huge. Whole Foods, which everyone thinks is a weird acquisition, actually gives Amazon crucial physical retail locations and supply chain capabilities for grocery delivery. The Whole Foods acquisition in 2017 is particularly interesting because it shows how Jeff thinks about moves others do and see. Everyone asks, why is an internet company buying a grocery store chain? It makes no sense. But Jeff sees multiple benefits. Physical locations for pickup and returns. Grocery supply chains and relationships. A premium brand that attracts affluent customers. Real estate in valuable locations. Data on grocery shopping behavior. All of these things become assets Amazon can leverage. And the day Amazon announces the Whole Foods acquisition, the stock prices of every other grocery chain crater. Kroger drops 5%. Walmart drops. Target drops. Everyone panics because they know Amazon is coming for their business. That's the fear factor Amazon has built. When they enter your industry, your stock price drops because investors know you're in trouble. This brings us to another aspect of Jeff's strategy that's often misunderstood. People think Amazon succeeds by having the lowest prices. That's part of it, but it's not the whole story. Amazon succeeds by having the best total experience. Selection, price, convenience, speed, customer service. All of it together. You might find a lower price somewhere else, but by the time you factor in shipping costs, delivery time, return policies, and trust, Amazon usually wins. Jeff understands that customer loyalty comes from consistently exceeding expectations. If you deliver products faster than promised, people love you. If your return process is painless, people trust you. If your customer service actually solves problems, people stick with you. These things cost money in the short term, but create long-term advantages that are almost impossible for competitors to match. This is why Amazon invests so heavily in customer service. They empower service reps to make customers happy, even if it costs money. They process returns with minimal friction. They give refunds without requiring you to ship items back in many cases. This seems expensive and irrational, but it builds trust. And trust is worth more than the cost of a few fraudulent returns. There's a story that illustrates this perfectly. In the early 2000s, a customer service rep at Amazon receives a call from an elderly woman who is upset because she ordered a book for her grandson's birthday and it didn't arrive in time. The rep apologizes and offers to refund her money. But the woman is still upset. Her grandson's birthday is ruined. So the rep does something unauthorized. She finds a local bookstore near the woman's address, calls them, and arranges for them to deliver the book that same day. Amazon pays for it, even though it costs way more than the original order. The woman is thrilled. She tells everyone about Amazon's incredible service. When Jeff hears about this, instead of reprimanding the rep for exceeding her authority and wasting money, he celebrates her. He shares the story company-wide as an example of what customer obsession looks like. This becomes part of Amazon's culture. Empowering employees to do whatever it takes to make customers happy. That culture spreads through the company. It's why Amazon will sometimes ship replacement items before you even return the defective one. Why they extend Prime memberships if there's a delivery problem. Why they offer instant refunds even if the item hasn't been returned yet. They're willing to absorb the cost of some fraud and abuse because the customer loyalty they build is worth far more. Now let's talk about Prime itself, because this is one of Jeff's most brilliant and risky choices. It's 2005, Amazon is growing steadily. Things are good. Then Jeff proposes this crazy idea. What if customers paid an annual fee and got free 2-day shipping on everything? His team thinks he's lost his mind. The math doesn't work. Shipping is expensive. If you offer unlimited free shipping, customers will order everything from Amazon, even low-margin items. The company will lose money on every order. It's financial suicide. But Jeff sees something different. He sees that unlimited free shipping changes customer behavior. If you don't have Prime, you batch your orders. You wait until you need several things, so shipping makes sense. But if shipping is free, you just order whenever you need something. You order more often. You order things you wouldn't have otherwise. Your entire shopping behavior shifts toward Amazon. He also sees that a subscription creates psychological commitment. Once someone pays for Prime, they want to get their money's worth. They actively choose Amazon over competitors to justify the membership fee. It's brilliant psychological manipulation, though Amazon would never phrase it that way. Prime launches at $79 per year. Analysts say it'll bankrupt Amazon. Early numbers seem to prove them right. Amazon is losing money on Prime members. They're shipping far more than expected. The costs are brutal, but Jeff stays patient. He tells his team to look at long-term value, not short-term losses. Prime members spend more. They shop more frequently. They try new product categories. And most importantly, they almost never leave. Once someone becomes a Prime member, retention rates are incredibly high. Over time, Prime transforms from a shipping program into an entire ecosystem. Video streaming gets added, music streaming, photo storage, exclusive deals, early access to products. It becomes harder and harder to leave because you're not just giving up free shipping. You're giving up a whole bundle of benefits. Today, Prime has over 200 million members worldwide paying $139 per year. That's over $25 billion in subscription revenue alone, before accounting for all the additional purchases those members make. The feature that was supposed to bankrupt Amazon becomes one of its most valuable assets. This is classic Jeff Bezos thinking. Make a choice that looks insane in the short term but that changes the game in the long term. Absorb losses while you build an advantage that compounds. Trust that customer loyalty will eventually translate to profits. The same thinking applies to Oz. When Amazon starts building Oz, they're investing billions in infrastructure with no guarantee anyone will use it. They're hiring thousands of engineers to build services that have no customers yet. They're essentially placing a massive bet that other companies will want to rent computing infrastructure from an online retailer. The early days of AWS are rough. The services crash frequently. Documentation is sparse. Customer support is limited. Developers try it, get frustrated, and leave. But Amazon keeps improving. They keep adding features. They keep lowering prices. They keep making it easier to use. And slowly, adoption grows. Startups start building entirely on AWS because it's cheaper than buying their own servers. Then larger companies start using it for specific projects. Then enterprises start migrating entire systems to Oz. The flywheel starts spinning. What makes Oz particularly genius is the pricing model. You only pay for what you use, no upfront costs. No long-term contracts. This lowers the barrier to entry to almost zero. Anyone can try AWS with a credit card and a few clicks. But once you build on AWS, switching becomes incredibly difficult and expensive. Your code is integrated with AWS services. Your team knows AWS tools. Your systems depend on AWS infrastructure. This creates enormous lock-in without requiring contracts. Customers stay because leaving would be too painful, not because they're legally obligated. And as they grow, they spend more. AWS revenue becomes highly predictable and profitable. By 2024, AWS has over 30% market share in cloud computing. That's more than Microsoft and Google combined. It generates over $90 billion in annual revenue with profit margins around 30%. It's an absolute cash machine. And it all started because Jeff saw Amazon's internal infrastructure and thought other people might pay for this. This ability to see potential where others don't is maybe Jeff's greatest skill. He looks at Amazon's infrastructure and sees EOEOZEO. He looks at e-readers and sees Kindle. He looks at voice assistants and sees Alexa. He looks at grocery stores and sees omnichannel retail. He's constantly pattern matching, seeing how assets or capabilities could be repurposed or extended. There is a famous Jeff Bezos quote. I very frequently get the question, what's going to change in the next 10 years? That's a very interesting question. I almost never get the question, what's not going to change in the next 10 years? And I submit to you that that second question is actually the more important of the two. This philosophy shapes everything Amazon does. Jeff doesn't try to predict trends or chase fads. Instead, he identifies fundamental customer needs that won't change. people will always want lower prices. They'll always want faster delivery. They'll always want bigger selection. So Amazon builds around those constants. This is why Amazon doesn't panic when competitors copy their strategies. Other retailers offer free shipping. So what? Amazon's already moved on to one-day delivery. Other companies build marketplaces. Fine. Amazon's marketplace has millions of sellers and sophisticated logistics integration that took years to build. Copying the visible strategy doesn't help if you can't replicate the invisible infrastructure. The infrastructure is the moat, the logistics network, the Oz platform, the Prime membership base, the data on hundreds of millions of customers, the relationships with millions of sellers, the fulfillment centers, the delivery trucks and planes, the technology systems. This is what protects Amazon, not patents or brand loyalty. Building that infrastructure required enormous capital and patience. Most companies can't or won't make those investments. They need to show profits. They need to return cash to shareholders. They need to hit quarterly targets. Amazon did none of those things for years. They just kept building and building and building. Jeff had the luxury of doing this partly because he controlled so much of the company's stock. He didn't need to please activist investors or worry about hostile takeovers. He could make decisions based on what was right for the company long term, not what would make the stock price go up this quarter. This is actually a crucial point that gets overlooked. Jeff's ability to execute his vision depended on having the power to ignore short-term pressure. If Amazon had been owned by a traditional mix of institutional investors, they would have forced profitability much earlier. They would have vetoed investments in AWS or Kindle or Prime. They would have optimized for near-term returns. But Jeff structured things so he maintained control. And he used that control to make choices that seemed crazy to everyone else but that he believed in. That's not something everyone can do. Most CEOs don't have that much power. Most companies can absorb years of losses while building for the future. So while the lessons from Amazon's success are real, there's also an element of unique circumstances. Jeff had the vision, the willpower, and the control to execute it. Take away any one of those three elements and Amazon probably doesn't become what it is. Still, the frameworks are applicable to anyone. Regret minimization works whether you're starting a trillion-dollar company or just making personal life choices. Day one thinking can apply to any organization or even to your own mindset. The focus on unchanging fundamentals rather than chasing trends is good advice for any business. And the willingness to think long-term, to invest in foundations, to prioritize building over extracting, that's universally valuable. Most people are too focused on immediate returns. They want results now. They're not willing to plant trees that will take years to mature. Jeff planted forests. He started planting in 1994, and he's still planting today. And now he's sitting in the shade of all those trees he planted decades ago. The question is, what trees are you planting? What are you building that won't pay off for years, but that will compound over time? What short-term comforts are you willing to sacrifice for long-term value? What will you regret not doing when you're old? These are the questions that matter. These are the choices that determine whether you build something significant or just coast through life. Jeff Bezos answered those questions one way. You'll answer them your own way, but you need to answer them. Because not choosing is itself a choice. And it's usually the choice that leads to the most regret. Subscribe to see more stories about the decisions that changed everything.